morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this, our very first webinar at BBY. And we'll be looking at the Lotterywest Grant applications. We have some people on there that I can see. We've got Jeremy Donovan from MG Corp, Marie Naroba, Emily Vans Dittart from CAMS in Headspace, Sarah Morris from Nuremberg General Manager. And some others there that haven't got their names up there, so we're not quite sure who they are, but we do have a few people online. My name's Alison Gibson. I'm a proud Noongar woman from Perth, Western Australia. Family connections throughout the southwest of Western Australia. I moved up here at the start of April and worked for BBY as the Community Development Advisor. I'll be facilitating today and we'll be involved in different bits of work through BBY with all of you, hopefully, as we go along this learning journey. Please, if you could make sure that your audio is on mute when you are not talking. That'll help clear up any echoing and sound disturbances. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to screen you all at one time as we don't have great NBN here, but we will make do with what we've got. If there are issues during the session, we are recording it and it will be put up on the web page as well as the Facebook page. And if people do have internet issues and would like it on a USB, we can send that out to you as well. So to begin today, I want to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians across the Kimberley. I particularly want to thank them for sharing their cultural and spiritual practices and education, and mention the Mirrawong people. I'm sitting on Mirrawong country, beautiful sunny up here in the East Kimberley. I know we've got people attending from East Kimberley and West Kimberley and possibly Perth as well. So I do want to pay my respects to the traditional owners of all the country that we are sitting on across these different offices. We have people linking into the presentation, as I said, from the East Kimberley in Balgo, Kalumbaroo, Kununurra, Wyndham, Halls Creek, and also in the West Kimberley in Broome. So covering quite a bit of the area up here, which is fantastic. We're really pleased with the response that we got to this first session. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by Jane Sterk and Tony Giamboi, who are part of the Northern Region team at Lotterywest. We're also joined by Naomi Avala, Siobhan Casson, and of course Melvin and Jenny in the BBY team. Hopefully we will have Sissy Gore-Birch joining us as well to speak about her experience with Lotterywest grants. So today's webinar is One Activity in BBY's ACO sector development strategy. One of the Empowered Communities East Kimberley priorities to build capacity of ACOs and to get them to engage with government and funding bodies. Another is to facilitate collaborative environment in which organisations work to support each other and maximise benefits to our communities. And the third is upskilling of staff within ACO organisations. So this session is a part of a set of activities that we'll be running over the next 9 months, I think it is. And it will be covering a range of different areas. If there are sessions that you are wanting information on, please speak to Jenny and we can see whether that fits in with, comes under one of the headings that we have been funded to deliver. So today we've got the discussion about the Lotterywest Grassroots Community Initiatives Grant Program and the process for making applications should it be appropriate for your agencies. So the grant round has just opened on the 1st of July and we're lucky enough to have, as I mentioned, a couple of people here with us today. To speak about their own experiences of the grant program. Lotterywest Grants first began in 1933. The last financial year, 2.5 million Lotterywest grants were received by Aboriginal organisations that work in the East Kimberley, with grants between $5,000 and $625,000. We'll hear from these organisations in a little while, but to introduce the current Lotterywest Grant program that opened on the 1st of July this year, I'd like to welcome Jane and Tony. Jane and Tony work in Lotterywest as the Grant Development Project, and are two of the members of the North Regional team, which covers the Pilbara, Kimberley and the Northwest Metro regions. Thank you, Jane and Tony, for joining us today.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
I'll now pass over to you so you can tell us a bit about the Lotterywest Grants program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction, and particularly to BBY for organising today and making it possible. I'd also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of all of the lands on which we meet, including the Whadjuk Noongar people. We're down here in Noongar country. Just to give a bit of background, I'm going to talk about the current programs that we have open, a bit about the process of applying, a bit about the criteria and sorts of things that we're looking for with grants, and how to get the best project put together. And I'll say this many times, but the best start is pick up the phone and ring and talk to us before you put an application in, and you'll get fed up with me saying that. If you do have very detailed questions about your specific project, I would suggest that you hold on to those, because to be honest, those are best dealt with one-to-one over the phone, or Tony and I are planning a trip up to the Kimberley. We'll be in Kununurra and Horse Creek that first week of August, the 2nd of August to the 6th, I think it is. And if you would like to meet with us to talk through something you've got in mind, your particular project or idea, please email us, as soon as you can after the session, and we'll start booking up appointments and meetings with you. And then we can talk face to face, which is always better. I guess I'm going to try and go into the screen share. I should explain I am a technophobe. I do have Penny on hand who's going to help and make sure that I get the steps right. So I'm going to share screen. Go to that. Okay, so hopefully you can all see our slide presentation. Yep. All right. So as we say, thank you very much for joining us today. Just need to remember how to move this on. So a bit of basic background information about Lotterywest. We've provided support to organisations across the whole of the Kimberley and WA. And I guess by working through and supporting organisations that are doing great work, we're able to touch the lives of many people across the whole state. Just a bit of further information, because often people don't realise that as well as the grants that we distribute, under our legislation, we also make a statutory allocation. So we have to make that, it's legislated. And in 2019-20, that was nearly $140 million to the Department of Health. And then to the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Interest, they had $80 million to support sport and rec grant programs, and the same amount to arts and culture. So that's one of the reasons why we don't do a lot of work in that space, because we've put significant amounts of money to other government departments that have a better, better understanding of those areas and how best to make use of that money. But aside from those statutory allocations, we are ultimately a discretionary grant maker. And that means that it is up to our board. They're the ones that set the policy, the priorities, and determine really, what's in and what's out. So I guess most of it is about getting to the nitty gritty and, what do we support and what don't we support. So your organisation is eligible to apply. Doesn't mean we'll necessarily fund what you're asking for, but you're eligible to apply if you're a local government authority or a not-for-profit. Excuse me. Sometimes we do get individuals that ring up or groups of people that ring up you say, well, you know, we're running a business, it never makes a profit, so can we have a grant? And the answer is no. You know, you need to have something in your rules, your constitution, that really makes it very clear that if the organisation makes a surplus, that money cannot be distributed to the members of the organisation, to the volunteers, to the staff, to the board members, either while it's operating or should the organisation decide to close down. Organisations have to be Australian. We won't support anything outside of Australia, and the benefit of the work has to be within WA. You know, if you are working across the border, we would consider looking at the bit that's in WA, but if you were, for example, also working in Northern Territory, we wouldn't be supporting the work in Northern Territory. People often ask us about social enterprise, and that can be a tricky space for us sometimes, but you know, if a social enterprise has something in their set of rules that says they are established as a not-for-profit, then we can certainly look at working with social enterprises too. There's always lots of things to work through. Lotterywest is a classic funder that works in what we call the grey space. And often when people say, will you support this? Our answer is very often, well, it depends. But you know, it's a case of working through to find out, you know, where is something that might align with Lotterywest that we can support rather than the bits that are a bit difficult for us. So in terms of what we can support, ultimately we're looking for grants that have a public benefit to the WA community. You know, that needs to be usually a fairly broad benefit, or you know, a very sort of quite a concentrated impact for a small number of people. And we're looking for things that fit within our community investment framework. And I'm going to get onto that a little bit later, because that's the thing that's guiding our grant making going forward. As you may know, for those, I think a lot of you have worked with Lotterywest in the past, we've been working in the COVID relief fund space for the last year and a bit. We've wound that up now, and we're sort of into Community Investment Framework 2.0. It's been relaunched, and you know, we'll go into what that covers a little bit later. But essentially, we're also a one-off funder. You know, we're not here to fund your ongoing costs. Often the things that we're supporting are basically a short-term project. It might be an event or series of events, or it's things. You know, it might be equipment. It could be websites or building renos or vehicles. In terms of what we don't support, as I've said, things outside WA, you know, we're not able to support things that go outside WA because we've made a promise and a commitment that all the proceeds of Lotterywest sales will go to benefit people in WA. We don't fund your day-to-day running costs. We do expect that if your organisation has set itself up, that it has the, you know, the means to do the things it set itself up to do. So we're really an added value funder. We don't support any costs or expenses that you may have incurred before a grant is approved. So even if you submit your application, if you start spending money at that point, we can't fund any of those costs until we've actually got the Premier's approval to say, yep, you know, we've approved the grant. So please be mindful of that when you're applying. You know, we can only fund things going forwards. We don't support religious activities or competitive sporting activities. People do get a bit confused sometimes, because quite a few of our branding things have pictures of sport, but what we're interested in funding is where the sport is the means to an end. It's not the end itself. So, you know, if it's about getting junior footy together in a league and playing football matches, that's not for us. But if sport is a way of bringing young people together, and when you've got them, you know, you can do other pieces of work with them that will make some impact in their lives in other ways, then that's something we can talk to you about. We also don't do medical research. And one thing that has changed with the relaunch of the Community Investment Framework is we no longer pay GST on things that are paid for by our grants. Now, that's really only significant for organisations that are not registered for GST, because in the past we've sometimes said, okay, well, we'll cover the GST too. Going forward, if you're not registered for GST, you will need to find that 10% from somewhere else yourselves. And it's probably also worth mentioning at this stage that if you are not an incorporated organisation, you're not registered with ORIC, or you're not an incorporated association, not a limited company by guarantee, then the maximum grant that you can apply for is also $15,000, and the maximum for non-GST registered organisations is $15,000. And the other thing that we've seen a bit of a strengthening from the board's perspective in terms of their expectations is that we don't fund work or projects or things which should be funded by or could be funded by other government departments or under other government funding arrangements. So, for example, anything pretty much that happens in a school during school hours, you know, teachers, books, classrooms, all of that is another government department's responsibility, and we don't go there. If you have a contract with the government department to deliver a particular service, even though you may feel that the contract doesn't cover all of the things that need to be covered, we still can't subsidise that contract. And that's basically because Lotterywest wasn't created to subsidise the WA government. You know, we were created to do other work and provide different sorts of benefits. We also don't support individuals. So, you know, if you are an individual, just a collection of individuals that are, you know, wanting to do some good work, good on you, that's great. But I'm afraid you need to be an organisation to actually be able to receive a grant from us. So in terms of how we work, we still pride ourselves on taking the community development approach. You know, it isn't you put an application in, we review it, and then we tell you the answer at the end. You know, and your application stands or falls by how well you've written your application. What we always say is talk to us before you apply. You know, the best success is achieved by doing that. We can listen to your ideas, what you're thinking of doing. We can then, you know, look at potential weak areas or things that might be a bit challenging for us, or we can sometimes say, well, actually, none of that really fits with us, but what else are you doing? And we might be able to help you do that instead. So it's an exploratory process. We work with you to try to get the best outcome for your organisation and for Lotterywest. And we recognise that you're all really busy people. You don't want to be wasting time writing applications that ultimately are doomed to fail. So, you know, we try to work with you to get the best outcome that we can. You know, we can help to link you with other organisations, because sometimes it's helpful to know someone else has done a piece of work elsewhere in the state. You know, we may know someone who's done something like that, and we can perhaps put you in touch with them. Or maybe they've used a particular contractor that worked well for them, that maybe somebody you would want to bring in and use. Perhaps at this stage, it's also worth recognising that, you know, at the end of the day, we are a government body. You know, we are owned by the WA state government, and therefore there is a base level of kind of governance that we need to see met before we can really proceed with an application. So when you do get to the application process, we will need to see your rule book, your constitution, some kind of written set of rules. We'll need to see your most recent annual financial statements, and that's, you know, depends on how they're formatted, but basically, you know, your income, your expenditure, your balance sheet, so we can see, you know, how the organisation's financials stack up. We also want to see that the organisation has a committee or a board that's doing its job, that's running the organisation well and is making decisions, that it's been elected. So, you know, we want to see board and committee meeting minutes and AGM minutes, where you're an organisation that's required to hold an AGM. And a bank statement. You need to have a bank account in the name of the organisation, so we need to see the bank statement. And not least because we want to make sure we pay the money, if you're successful, into the right bank account. But primarily, I guess what we're looking for at Lotterywest is the purpose of what you want to do and what the outcomes are that it will achieve. And that's the thing to hold in your mind throughout all of this is, you know, why are you doing what you want to do and what difference will it make? So we're getting into the Community Investment Framework territory. I'll just leave that up there for a minute for you to look at and read through. I'm not going to read that to you. You can read it yourselves. And we're going to unpack that a little bit in the next few slides. Okay, I'm not sure how quickly you read, but you get the chance to read it again on the next slide. So if you go onto our website, you will find this. So don't worry about trying to write any of it down or being able to capture or read all of it. You know, it's there up on our website and you can read it in your own time. But you can kind of see that there are 5 key pillars there. And those are our priority areas. 4 of them are blue, and that's the Lotterywest space. And the red space is Healthway. And Healthway is another government-owned body. They were set up under different legislation, but we've been looking for ways to bring the two organisations closer together. So we have a common CEO, we share some common board members, but they do work quite differently to us. So, you know, if you're thinking of something in that healthy, active people space, your best bet is to ring the number and talk to the Healthway staff who can guide you through, you know, the sorts of things that they can fund. So today we're going to focus on the blue zone. So you can see there are 4 key things: inclusive, thriving community, connected cultural experiences, protected, sustainable ecosystems, and smart, innovative society. And that encompasses an awful lot of things, to be honest. You know, there's a lot to go at there. I guess with inclusive, thriving community, that's really about bringing people together, helping people feel part of or be connected to the community, reducing vulnerability and disadvantage in the community so that people are able to participate more fully or, you know, to engage. So there's lots of things that fit under that. And to be honest, the majority of applications that come to us fall under that pillar, if you like. Connected cultural experiences, that's actually about bringing people together through arts, heritage, cultural activities. We have a very particular, you know, we make a point of noting in there that this is about, you know, helping to make Indigenous culture strong, for it to be respected and understood and embraced and acknowledged by the broader Australian community. But there's a lot of things that fit under there too. Protected and sustainable ecosystems, that's fairly self-explanatory. Sometimes, for example, with ranger work, it might be that it sits in connected cultural experiences, or it might be around, you know, land management activities that are protecting the environment or caring for land and country. So it might be that it fits under there. Smart, innovative society, that's quite a tricky one to explain, but I mean, really what we're looking for there are things that make a big change for a lot of people, or a significant portion of people, either across the whole of the state or within a region. That's a real change piece. You know, it's a different way of doing things. It's a let's try something on a big scale, or scaling up something, you know, at that size. Now, don't get too hung up about which of those your project or your idea might fit under. We recognise that very often you'll be achieving outcomes under more than one, but there's usually one that is stronger than the rest. So focus on that one, but also explain to us in your application how you'll also be, you know, delivering outcomes under the others, and we will sort it out at our end. So the bottom bit of the, which possibly wasn't on your screen, but the bottom bit of that diagram shows that we have now 3 programs. And the one we're going to talk about today is the grassroots and community-led, and essentially that is everything that comes to us from the community. So every application you submit from now onwards, for the foreseeable future, will be coming in and treated as a grassroots or community-led application. The other 2 are work in progress. They will be initiated by Lotterywest. We're still working out what they're going to be, how they're going to work, and I guess it's a watch this space, possibly towards the second half of this financial year before we're really ready to get going on those programs. So, you know, everything that comes to us will be grassroots and community-led because it's coming from the community to us. It's a bottom-up process. And that's another strength of Lotterywest, I think, that, you know, we have that scope for people to say, here's the stuff we think needs doing in our community or without the people we work with, and we'd like you to consider funding it. So preparing your application, well, the applications are open. I need to emphasise here, during the last year, we've been operating in a grant round process. That's not the case anymore. You know, applications are open. You can apply anytime you like. There is no closing date, so don't rush. You know, there is no pressure to rush to apply. When you're ready, put your application in, and it will, you know, work its way through our system. In terms of what we look for, there's actually 5 bullet points there, but that basically some boils down to being 4 criteria, and these are the assessment criteria we look at when we're considering the applications that come to us. So connection to the community investment framework. We're not looking for square pegs in round holes. You know, you need to genuinely be able to show that the work you're proposing to do will fit under one of those priority streams and will achieve some of the outcomes that we're looking for with our grant making. It needs to be, a strong proposal that's responding to an identified need or opportunity. What we want to understand is what is that challenge or that opportunity or that issue out there in the community that you're trying to do something about. Start with that story. We need then to understand, well, what is it you're trying to achieve with that? What is your proposal? What are the actions or the things you're planning to do that are going to make a change and make a difference? We also want to know, who is going to be contributing towards that cost. So, when you're looking at your budget, it does need to be appropriate, it needs to be realistic, and we need to be able to see that it's value for money. There is no magic number, but what we sometimes say is, look, budget as if you were spending your own money. Ask for enough, because we don't want you to come in too low and then you can't achieve what you want to do, but don't ask for more than you really need. And we particularly look for co-contributions. And again, that's something that we've seen, a strengthening position on the board, that, if there are other people that could or would fund this work, we expect you to be trying to secure some of that money as well, or contribute from your own resources, rather than just rely on Lotterywest. Now, we realise when you're putting your budget together, you won't have got a yes from everybody before you come to us. So, make it clear in your application who you have heard a yes from and who you're still waiting to hear from, or who you're going to apply to. The other thing we want to understand is, well, why your organisation and who are you working with? So, are you the best placed organisation to do that piece of work? Particularly if you're moving into something that you don't normally do. And to be honest, down here in Perth, we get a lot of organisations, perhaps based in Perth or sometimes interstate, that come to us to talk about work they want to do in the Kimberley. And we will always say, well, who are you connecting with up there? Where does what you're proposing to do fit with the stuff that's already going on, that we know is already happening? And we would always be encouraging them to say, well, are they the best people to do this work, or is there somebody in the Kimberley who would be better placed to do that? Because they have those networks, the connections, they've got the infrastructure, they've got the relationship with the community. So that is something that we do look at. So what we also need to understand is, what is the outcome? People often tend to say, do you fund vehicles? Do you fund buildings? And what we'll say is, well, what's that event going to be used for? What's the purpose of that building? What is that event? Why are you holding that event? And what will it achieve once you've done it? What is that outcome? What's going to be different? When the thing is finished and you look back, what are we going to see that's different to the before and after type picture? So in terms of how you apply, this is just a screenshot. Don't worry about being able to read the detail, but when you Google Lotterywest Grants, this is when you find your way to the grants bit as opposed to the playing games bit. This is one of the screens that you'll see. So you can see we've circled a bit that's registered for updates. So if you want to keep in touch and know when things change, and we've put new things on our website, register for updates. So for example, once those other two program streams start to get moving, we will notify people by email. The magic thing there is apply, but also the frequently asked questions. There's a lot of really good information in there, and we will probably keep adding to that because we've relaunched the portal, but the team that are doing all that communication, they continue to keep loading new content, so keep checking back. But when you click on the apply button, it will take you to something that looks like this. If you already know that your organisation has had grants from us before, you're interested in the left-hand side, that login side. If you don't know your business partner number, and that would be on any previous correspondence about previous grants, just ring our phone number, the 133 number, and that will be on the screen at the end, and ask them, and they will tell you what your business partner number is, because obviously there's lots of organisations with very similar names. The only way to make sure that we're dealing with your organisation uniquely is to give everybody a number. Please don't fill in the ABN box. People end up in a loop. You only fill in the ABN number if you haven't had a grant from us before. And if you're unsure, ring our number. They will check for you. You just need to know what the legal name of your organisation is, because we don't go by what you're commonly known as. It's whatever your legally registered organisation's name is. So this is our sausage machine. We are a bit of a pipeline in terms of, what happens. So I'll say it again, look for information. Look on the website first. It does help if you've had a bit of a look at the website. You've looked at some of the frequently asked questions. You've had a look at the community investment framework. Then ring us and we will talk to you. Then start working on your grant. And it's absolutely fantastic that we've got this partnership with BBY. And I really would encourage you to work with them and to get their help and support in this process of thinking your project through. How you might formulate it, how you might put your application together, the sorts of documents you might need to attach. And actually, I think, they can also help you work through towards, later stages of the project. How are you going to deliver it? How are you going to equip that grant? What information are you going to need to actually equip it? There actually should be a little middle step between the next one, because what happens when you press submit, and while you're working on your grant application, you can save it. You don't have to do it all in one go. So you can start writing it, make sure you save it, come out, do some other work, talk to people, go back and start it again. Once you click submit, it comes to our intake team here. Now they have to do some work on it in the first instance before it comes through for assessment. And that can take quite a bit of time. To be honest, at the moment, there are still grants that, came in before the end of June, back in April, that are still coming through to assessment. So, that's why things do take time. We've had a conversation with you before you apply. We continue that conversation once the application's in. We will pick the phone up and talk to you. If there are things that we don't understand or we think we might have, not understood correctly, we will talk to you. If we need more information, we will ask you for it. So, give us as much as you can, but we will have that conversation once the application is in. We then assess the grants. So Tony and I are part of the North team. It's likely to come to one of us or to Pearl, who is the missing partner today. We will then put a recommendation up to the board. And in between that, it goes through various cycles of internal review before it finally gets in front of the board. We are only assessors. We don't make decisions. The board may come back with questions, that can delay the speed with which your application is processed, or they may decide not to go along with the recommendation that's given to them. They may have a different view of the application. Ultimately, all the board's recommendations then go to the minister, and our minister is the Premier, who signs off on all grants that are made by Lotterywest. And that whole process can take 4 months. So at least 4 months before you need to know the outcome is when you need to get your grant to us. If you're thinking of an event, you need to think about what's the latest date that you need to know whether or not you have funding from Lotterywest. And that's not going to be 4 months before the date of your event, it's going to be sometime before then. Happily, we hope that it's good news. You get advised of the decision, it's a yes, you have the money. Then, we have a new tool now that is how you request payment, how you report on your grant and how you equip the grant. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but that has changed. It's called a grant management tool. There is an example of it up on the website, so you can see the kind of information that you will need to provide. But I would urge you to think about that, not just get caught up in the rush of success, because you need to be collecting information while your project's happening so you can equip the grant well and in a timely manner. If you do get into acquittal problems, if you get a failure to acquit, it does create problems for the organisation down track. So it's not that we wouldn't fund you, but it does make life harder for you and for us if you do get a failure to acquit. Then we hope you'll share the good news and tell people that Lotterywest has supported your work. And then there is that, report, evaluate. Not everything has to be evaluated. If you're asking Lotterywest to fund it, then we will need to understand the purpose of the evaluation. And our team here, the community impact analysis team, might want to have a look at that evaluation framework and come up with some things that we would like you to be collecting as well. Okay. So here's some recent examples of grants that we did. I think one of those dates, some of those date back to pre-COVID, one of them was during COVID. These were all sort of East Kimberley or Kimberley based. And I think the the Bunaba one was, that was an interesting one. That was kind of testing our boundaries because there was a bit in there that was about social enterprise. But it was very much around creating financial independence and sustainability for Bunaba people and BDAC. So, it can be a tricky space for us, but we're certainly willing to work through that with you and see if there is space for us. And I guess just to kind of finish up, really, there's a quote that we had from Joe Ross at Bunaba, and he said, "The Lotterywest Grant has been an important first step in implementing our Bunaba digital strategy. Through the project, we're working with our community to strengthen our language and cultural assets, create new tourism experiences, and boost cultural enterprise. The Bunaba Country website builds our capacity within the digital world, and we're working toward a financial independence that allows us to live on country, be connected socially and culturally amongst ourselves and within the broader Australian community." And I think that was an interesting project because that shows how we are shifting away from some of our older thinking to newer ways of how we might support people. So we're here to help. Talk to us, talk to BBY. As I say, we will be up in the region that first week of August. I'm going to leave you with this screen now, just for a few minutes. The phone number, our switchboard number is 133 The email address is grants@lotterywest.wa.gov.au. So email us and say, hey, can we get a meeting booked with you? Do that as soon as you can, and we will book you in and come and meet you face to face while we're up in the area.
Jane, I've also volunteered my own direct phone number and direct email address.
Awesome.
Just to expedite things a little bit because it gets pretty time consuming trying to book in appointment times. So come straight to me if you'd like to see us face to face. But certainly if you'd like to have a chat about an idea as well, you're welcome to give us a call.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Tony. Okay, so I think if we exit.
Thank you, Tony and Jane. That was fantastic. That gave a really good overview. When you were talking, I was just wondering if there is any Aboriginal involvement, particularly in the assessment process of who's getting what funds to determine whether they are culturally appropriate or linked to in the right ways, getting that cultural knowledge into your team as well.
Okay, so we would generally, often with that, we would be looking for references around that. So we would go and talk to other organisations about, that are working on the ground and would know, and they may often are ACCOs, Aboriginal corporations. So, if it wasn't coming from an ACCO, then we would be talking to other people about, is this something that's really needed and wanted? Is this something that the community thinks is important that they support? We do actually have some internships, Aboriginal interns that come into Lotterywest from time to time. And we do find it's a two-way street. We hope we're giving them a valuable opportunity to be part of Lotterywest and to have some work experience. But also they can actually provide very valuable insights for us around, working in culturally appropriate ways.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I think it's a good opportunity now to speak to someone that has actually received one of the grants. We will come back to Tony and Jane and get a little bit more information, have an opportunity to answer some questions then. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Naomi Avala. Naomi worked with Little Nuggets in Halls Creek from May 2017 to December 2020. And in 2020, she helped Little Nuggets prepare an application to Lotterywest that was funded in December 2020. Hello, Naomi. Are you off mute, Naomi? Oh no, we can't hear you. We've got you.
Can you hear me?
We can. Fantastic.
It must be because I've got my headphones and it must not work without them. That's all right. I can do this.
That's okay. So for those that aren't from Halls Creek, can you briefly introduce Little Nuggets to us?
Yeah, sorry to turn you up. Yeah, so Little Nuggets is an approved early childhood service based in Halls Creek. It's the only approved early childhood service. It's adjacent to the Child and Parent Centre. It offers long daycare and vacation care, currently licensed for 66 children. And Little Nuggets originally started out as a playgroup for local families, which then progressed to become an approved provider in its current building, I think in around 2012.
Excellent. Great. Can you tell us a little bit about the grant that you got from Lotterywest and what that's helped them achieve?
Yeah, so one of the things that we discovered while I was in Halls Creek was that there was still a real big need to increase Indigenous participation in early childhood, because research does prove that children who do engage in high quality early childhood education can actually support their overall achievement when they progress to school. So the lottery grants application helped us to achieve an outreach program to reach these families who are not currently accessing the service. It also provided a platform to kind of return to old school methods of visiting families in the home, creating those relationships, reducing those barriers that we felt that were preventing families to actually coming into the centre just to inquire. So establishing those relationships to kind of strengthen that connection even before they came to the centre. We believe that this would empower families, reduce barriers, like I said, but more importantly, create a presence in areas of the communities that we hadn't accessed before. So our grant was for a vehicle to provide safe transportation, but also to provide a future opportunity to look into addressing any transportation barriers as staffing arrangements allowed.
Excellent. So getting to those more vulnerable groups that can't access the service without that transport.
Absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a bit about your experience? And I'm just mindful of time. We've got 15 more minutes and we're happy to go over, but I'm mindful that some people will need to log off at 12 o'clock. So could you tell us a little bit about your experience in the process of getting the grant and any suggestions or tips you'd have for other people?
Yeah, well, it was probably the longest grant application that I actually went through, because I have applied for other grants before. Overall, it was actually quite straightforward. And when I'm listening to Jane, I'm thinking, yes, that's exactly what they did. So we submitted an application, and then I believe it was Tony that rang me, and I felt like we had like 10 conversations regarding the grant, and basically just trying to nut out exactly what we wanted, what the outcome that we wanted to achieve. And I guess he helped us to make it realistic, just like Jane said, make it realistic and make sure you're only asking for what it is that you need. And I felt like we needed to be more precise in how we measured the outcomes. So he supported us with that. So yeah, it was really good to have them there to kind of go through and really kind of help us condense what it is that we wanted to achieve in line with the criteria.
Yeah, I know some people have difficulties finding the right language to explain what they want and why they want it. Were those conversations with Tony helpful to be able to put that in writing on your application?
Yeah, they were, because I think essentially what it is that Tony wasn't emotionally involved with Little Nuggets where I was, and so it's really good to have that balance, because you can get really caught up in what you do and what you want to achieve, but at the end of the day you do have to make sure that what you do provide is in line with the grant. Yeah,
that's great advice.
Yeah,
thank you, Naomi. That was really helpful, and I think it really does show the value of having that contact with Lotterywest and being able to work through all those different aspects of the grant process and allocating enough time to do that well, as Jane mentioned before, allocating at least 4 months for that process to go through.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing
You're welcome.
your experience with me.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Siobhan to speak with us as well. In June 2020, the Kimberley Language Resource Centre received $70,000 from Lotterywest as part of the COVID-19 Relief Funds program. In addition, they have just received another grant for business consultants. I'm pleased to welcome Siobhan Casson, a Research, Training and Development Officer with the Kimberley Language Resource Centre, to share a little of her experience obtaining a Lotterywest grant. Hello, Siobhan.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Could you let us know a little bit about the grant that you have received, or both of them actually, for your agency?
Yeah, the COVID relief grant was, I think, a little bit of a different situation because they were, when they were put out, I mean, we didn't have any interaction at all on that until the acquittal process. With the business consultants grant, that was, that we actually got a response quite quickly to that in terms of somebody calling, and it was, and sort of working through what the grant would look like, because the organisation is currently doesn't get any operational funding from the federal government, which it's trying to renegotiate. It was really pleasing that essentially when you apply for the grant, you have to be as honest as you can be. So, when I put in for that grant, I could have tried to hide the fact that we were in this tricky situation, which was partly to do with the, with the organisation in previous years. And what I found quite positive was that in having the conversations with the grant officer, they were sort of asking more detailed questions about the situation. So we've re-engaged with the federal government, and they're going to be providing some funding this year. So the grant will be, given once Lotterywest receives an official letter. Now, I don't think there would be any or many other grant, funding bodies that would actually go to that extent of getting so into what was happening with the organisation. So it was just a very positive experience, because it was, we want to help you. We can see that, you're trying to lift your organisation up again. So that was quite a good process. And they asked for a rescope, which again, I mean, I've never experienced that before, actually having a funding body contact and say, well, look, something's changed, provide some additional information. And I think, what Naomi said is really key. Don't do a blue sky application, and don't try and hide anything that's not right. So, for example, if you are down on staffing and you're trying to actually bring in some money to build up some project activity, which might have funding from somewhere else, which will support your staffing, you need to be sure that all those building blocks are in place, because of course, you might get the Lotterywest grant and then not actually have the staff to deliver on that. I mean, it applies to all grants. I think it's the only funding body that actually interacts so much. I mean, you essentially, with most grant applications, you just put them in and then you wait for the 4 or 6 months, and then you get your reply, yes, you did get it, no, we didn't. So I think that's the most sort of unique thing, at least not with any other funding bodies, granting bodies that I've worked with, that they're actually so interactive that when they get the application, they are, they actually want to work through with you so that you can get some money.
Genuine interest.
I think it's, so even though, as Naomi said, that we all have like personal emotional investments in our organisations, what comes back from the staff at Lotterywest is, well, we appreciate your emotion and everything, and that you really want this, but we want to make this as, as useful to you as possible. And there's nothing worse, and this has happened, and this is partly to do with what happened with the organisation. It's nothing worse than having grants hanging over that then you're trying to, and you ask for extensions and you still can't get it done. It's demoralising having to give money back. So I think for all grant applications, that's the basis, is you put in for what at that moment in time you can realistically achieve, not, oh, well, we might get this staff in, or we might get this other grant in.
It sounds like there's been some great learnings through this process that have helped you with other grants as well, and assessing, what to go for and how much. And like you say, what is realistic and staffing issues and relying on other grants coming through, funding coming through, are definitely some of those that need to be taken into consideration. It also sounds like it was a great example of what Jane was saying earlier about being a bit more flexible and looking at how we can fund things that we haven't necessarily done in the past, and working through those issues, and having that contact with Lotterywest to nut that out together and see what are the possibilities, rather than just going no, declined, and hearing nothing more. Yeah,
I mean, there are other granting bodies that will allow you to ring up a grant officer to speak to get some clarification and to run your thing by. But they won't give you actually any idea as to whether or not they think it might be successful. That's definitely a unique feature of Lotterywest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is there any suggestions or tips or final words that you'd like to share with the group today?
Yeah, just when you're writing the application, just short, plain sentences to the point. Don't try and big things up by using waffly language and making everything sound wonderful. Just think about what you want, be very clear in how you write it, and then be very clear how you can measure it. Again, don't go too big on what you think you're going to provide as a measurement tool for the success.
Excellent. That sounds like great advice, because you don't want to put lots of effort into something that they're really not interested in reading, and it's not going to help your case. Have those conversations and get it down clear and on those applications. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was really useful.
All right, thank you.
I'd now like to invite Jane and Tony back into the conversation, and we've got a couple of minutes. I'm just wondering, is there something that you want to say first? I know there was another part, or would you prefer if we had some questions?
Yeah, just a really quick. Just a really quick comment. Yeah, I think part of our job is just walking alongside applicants and just smoothing that pathway for them. So obviously there's a question of language. So we obviously talk very differently internally about our own assessment process, and there's a lot of jargon and stuff. But we want to keep it pretty simple and straightforward with applicants themselves, and really understand what their project's all about and what they're trying to achieve and so forth. So we want to keep it, fairly concise, and we want you to use your own language, not to use our words. We're kind of interpreters for our management and for our board and so forth. So we'll, reflect that in the assessment process.
Excellent. I will take this opportunity to thank who's participated today. We will go after I've just done a bit of housekeeping, a bit of admin stuff, and open it up for any further discussion afterwards. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jane and Tony from Lotterywest and making that effort to connect with the agencies up in the East Kimberley, and look forward to meeting you when you do come out here. Also like to thank Siobhan and Naomi for their personal experiences they talked about, which I think was really helpful as well, and encouraging for other agencies to make an effort and put in an application, whereas maybe it seemed a bit daunting before. I'd also like to thank Jane and Melvin, the BBY staff behind the scenes today. Jane and and Melvin will be having contact with agencies ongoing about different sessions that are coming up. And we really hope that you join in for those, and we keep on building capacity within our agencies to take up more opportunities that are happening and build strong agencies. If you do need additional support, please reach out. The people here at BBY and Lotterywest are really keen to speak with the agencies and really find out what the needs are on the ground and see if they can assist in any way. many conversations can happen, as many as you're willing to. It sounds like 10 conversations happened for one application, so they're definitely willing to talk through all this stuff with people that are interested. As mentioned, Jane and Tony will be coming out to Kununurra and Halls Creek at the start of August. Jenny is also available to come out to sites either prior to that and have some conversations about what your thoughts are on what you might want to apply for. So please, if you're thinking about that, we are available to do it over Zoom, or we can do face-to-face things. We will explore what opportunities there are for that as well. So please do reach out. You've got the email address from BBY, so yeah, reply to that if you can't find the contact details of anything, please give us a call and we can help you. The bookings will be need to make those appointments to have those conversations with Lotterywest. So please get back to us as soon as possible. As mentioned, Tony has given his direct contact details, so you can contact him directly, or you can come to BBY and we will also make appointments for you as well. I think that we will be sending out a feedback form, so please, if everyone could share your thoughts on it. This is our first one, we want to improve it, and we need your advice and thoughts on that so that we can keep on making it better as we go along. If there's someone that might be interested in this and didn't get to see it, please have a look on the web page very soon. It should be up on Wednesday, or the Facebook page. Or if you can't find it anywhere, again, contact us. That's all from us. Thank you so much. And if there is anyone, we'll keep it open for a little bit longer. If there is anything that people still on the line there wanted to ask Jane or Tony, please, if you could put it in the chat session, and then we can open up the mics for you to speak for that.
And I'll just take the chance to say thank you very much to everybody at BBY for making this happen. It's a great way to work for us. Tony and I haven't done a webinar, although Lotterywest has done them. This is our first webinar too. So apart from the planet's feet on the water, getting our tech working the first thing this morning, it's all been pretty good. And actually, the other contributors, because as grants assessors, we often don't get to hear what the experience has been like from your end. So, you know, it was great to get that feedback and to get your insight into what the process felt like for you. So yeah, it's really nice to know.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
And we look forward to meeting everybody in August, getting out of the Perth rain.
The sun's always shining up here. All right, almost everyone has left, and I can't see any messages on there, so we might close up the chat group now. Thank you all for attending, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. See you later.
See ya.
Bye-bye. See ya.